Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into this craziness. All right, folks, we're going to go through how to wreck the playoff and this idiotic plan, and I think that's being kind. Honestly, this is one of the dumbest playoff layouts I've ever seen. Oh, it's so dumb. It's just so dumb. So they have fixed 2025. So I'm going to give them credit for that. I thought we were going to have to live with this stupid top four bye situation with conference champions, which is really, as I've called it, communism. But now they're going to go to straight seeding. So this coming year, the top 12 teams will be based on seeding, with the top four getting byes instead of the conference champions. And last year, we know what a disaster that was, because you had two teams that wound up getting byes that were ranked way below two other teams. And you wound up with Tennessee, who was the number 7 seed. 5 through 8 was supposed to have home field advantage, but because of communism, they wound up having to go on the road to play Ohio State instead of staying at home at Neyland and playing SMU. So, yeah, I think Josh Heupel would have preferred staying at home and playing SMU, if I had to guess.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
So at least they are fixing 2025. Now, we've thought over the last few days we were getting ready to go to the proper 16-team playoff for 2026. The momentum's all headed that way, and it does sound like we're going to 16. And there's some other little things they're going to put into it that I think will be very entertaining. But they're throwing a monkey wrench into this that is so bad. I can't even believe it. When I read this, I was like, this almost sounds like some kind of a joke. Let me tell you what they're going to do here. It says explaining the Big Ten SEC 16-team college football playoff proposal and how it would work. Oh, it's so stupid. Now, the first part of this makes perfect sense. They're trying to figure out some way to make the conference championship weekends exciting again, because really they're kind of not, and they're almost a penalty to the teams playing in them, because you can get somebody hurt, like Carson Beck got hurt last year in the conference championship game, and it really didn't do that much for them. And they have to play an extra game. So that's really almost a penalty for being one of the top teams in either the Big Ten or SEC or the other conferences. So I think what they're wanting to do is a play-in situation on the conference championship weekends, and then to reward the top 2 teams or the top team, depending on which conference you're in. And I'll show you that. For example, in the SEC, this would be the format. So you would have, last year you would have had Texas and Georgia. They get a bye. So they're not playing in this. And whoever has the best record, they become the SEC champion, which means the regular season becomes important. But the top 2 get a bye. Then you would have had 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And the winners of those 2 games advance into the playoffs. So this championship weekend, instead of only having 1 game, you get 2, and they're very exciting games that people really care about. And the top 2 teams in the conference get rewarded by having a bye. And the exact same thing would happen in the Big Ten. Now, what you do with the ACC and the Big 12 is the conference champion, or the team with the best record at the end of the year, with tiebreakers involved, they get a bye. Number 1 gets a bye. Then 2 versus 3 would play to get into the playoff with the automatic berth. So again, you've got a very exciting game in both conferences, and the winner in the regular season, they get rewarded with a bye. So that all makes perfect sense, and that solves the dilemma of whether or not you should rest players or do anything like that, because look, after losing Carson Beck, they'd have been better off had they just not even played the game, Georgia, and just taken an L and been done with it, even though they won the game, but they lost Carson Beck. All right, now we're going to get into the insanity. And this is the part that I can't believe they're not just going with straight seeding. They went to straight seeding for 2025. You would think they would have learned something from that and said, okay, we tried this before. It was stupid. It didn't work. So now we're moving to straight seeding. Well, now in 2026, they want to go back to doing even something dumber. Instead of just going 1 through 16, the top 8 get home field advantage, which is huge, and 1 plays 16, 2 plays 15, 3 plays 4, and then on down the line. That way, if you're the number 1 team seeded, not only do you get to play at home, you get to play the worst team, which is number 16. So you've got a huge advantage, which you earned, you deserve. But instead, they're wanting to do this crazy double bye nonsense. It says the Big Ten and SEC are also in favor of the idea of a double bye, And I'm hearing this is Tony Petitti's idea, and that Sankey's kind of like he's not 100% on board. It says the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the bracket, in the proposed 16-team bracket, they would not play the first 2 weeks. And I'm going to go on down to the bottom here. Here's what you got in round 1. You would take 16 versus 13 and 15 versus 14. That's your first week. You'd only have 2 ball games. That's it. You'd take the bottom 4 teams and they would play as a play-in weekend. Why, I don't know. Then the next week you'd have a bunch of games. And this is where the winner of these 2 teams would play against the rest of the field, minus the number 1 and number 2 teams. So, for example, Boise State would have played Indiana. Arizona State would have played Notre Dame. The winner of the 14-15 would have played Penn State. SMU would have played number 7 Tennessee. Alabama versus Ohio State. And the winner of 16-13 would have played Notre Dame. Then Oregon and Georgia would have still not played. Now, if this isn't goofy enough, then you get down. So you're basically going from 16 teams to 14 teams. Then you play 6 ball games and you go down to 8 teams. Then you go 8, 4, 2, 1. It's the most convoluted, weird thing I've ever seen. And I guess Oregon and Georgia, they wouldn't play for 3 straight weeks.
What an idiot. Oh, what a loser.
There are tons of articles coming out wearing this stuff out. This one says, Big Ten SEC plans for college football playoff are getting more nonsensical. And it's got quotes like, could people muck up a perfectly good product this badly? It took a full season for the public to figure out how the first 12-team college football playoff worked. It says the format will change again in year 2 this week's, which they called a smart move. I totally agree. Then they totally screw it up with all of this double seed nonsense insanity. Why don't you just do the simple thing, which you learned after year 1 was the way to go, which is the straight seeding. And now that you're going to 16 teams, just do 1 through 8, home field, 9 through 16, on the road, done, finished. No problem. The other thing that it does, by going to 16 teams, you get a lot more money because you're going to have a lot more games. So you can renegotiate the college football playoff money, have your automatics, have the SEC Big Ten with 4 automatics, the ACC Big 12 get 2 automatics, then you've got the at-large plus the group of 6. And the reason that you do that is the fact that the SEC and Big Ten are more competitive. Now, the reason you can't just go 1 through 16 is the fact that this is not the NFL where all the teams are treated equally and there's parity. Everybody's got the same salary cap. Every team gets to draft based on how they finished the year before. The worst team drafting first, the best team drafting last. It's all based on parity in the NFL, so you don't have to have extra guaranteed spots. But in the SEC and Big Ten, the 2 conferences that are the best, you do need to have some automatic spots. Otherwise, they're going to beat each other up, and you're going to have teams that don't deserve to get in. So I do understand that part of it, and there's other reasons why you want those automatic spots for the Big Ten SEC. The SEC is wanting to move, well, at least Greg Sankey wants to move to a 9-game conference schedule. The only way you're going to do that is with those automatic spots. There's no way any of the coaches are going to agree to this unless they know there's 4 spots that they're not going to have to worry about for the SEC. The other thing that it does, it will allow the Big Ten to play the SEC head-to-head, which is what they want to do in the season because they know, again, more money. And Petitti will not agree to play the SEC unless they go to a 9-game schedule because Big Ten already has a 9-game schedule. And I think what they're wanting to do is 1 versus 1. For example, last year it would have been Oregon versus Georgia. And then the next game would have been Ohio State versus Texas. All of those games, all down that list, would be huge ball games and would get a lot of TV rights money. And that's the one thing Petitti understands really well is TV rights money. The other thing with the conference play-in games, now instead of having 1 game, for example, you had Georgia versus Texas, now you would have 2 games, which again was South Carolina, Tennessee, and then Alabama versus Ole Miss. So you're going to get twice as much money. Well, you probably won't get twice as much, but you'll get a lot more money for those conference championship weekends for those 2 conferences. So that's 3 opportunities to get a whole lot more money. And I failed to mention, let me back up for a minute here. Yeah, beep, beep, beep. When you go to a 9-game schedule for the SEC, that's more money from ESPN, and they've offered around $80 million for that, which would be about $5 million a team, which would help breach the gap between the Big Ten and the SEC.
Ain't it peculiar how money seems to do that very thing?
One thing Petitti does well is get TV rights money.
Roadhouse.
And he cut a great deal for the Big Ten, and they've got an advantage on everybody. So the SEC, by going to 9 games, would bridge that gap by about $5 million. They're actually down about $10 million a year. So there's all kinds of reasons to do this correctly. If they do this idiocy, this will last 1 year. This double bye nonsense and then the 13 through 16, the first weekend, is the dumbest thing. I just cannot believe, after what they learned from last year with the playoff, and they smartly went to a straight seeding situation, that they're wanting to back up and go into this craziness. Hopefully Greg Sankey will sit down with Petitti and say, look, I understand you're all about TV rights money and all that. This is just dumb. This is stupid. And you're going to actually have less games, which means less TV rights money. I have no idea what Petitti's thinking on this. It makes no sense to me at all. And hopefully Greg Sankey will, straighten him out, say, look, we're getting everything we want. Let's not screw this up. Let's make it super easy, 1 through 16, and be done with it.
Thank you for playing. Should we or should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid?
And again, the top teams in the conferences are getting their bye. They're just getting it during the championship weekend, which they earned, which makes the regular season very important because you earn the bye. And that's the one big thing everybody's been worried about, is depreciating the regular season and making it worth less. With a bye, you won't be, because everybody's going to want that to rest their team and to not have injuries. Whereas 3 through 6, for example, in the SEC and Big Ten, look, you just better play your way in. You should have played better in the regular season. And the other nice thing about it, the losers in the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and Big 12, they could still go to a bowl game afterwards from that championship weekend. So their season's not over right there. They get an extra game, which is great for their fan bases.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Anyway, I did want to go over this. I read this today, I almost fell over. It's like, there's no way these guys can be this stupid. You just can't be this dumb. And I'm going to call it out. I'm going to do everything I can to stop this, because this is just, oh my God, I can't believe it. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that. Well, I know there's no way to like this content. I know y'all don't like this. Anyway, hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, 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 you know what to do. Hit that button right there. Help you get my videos. Won't cost you a dime. And right over here's the most recent video, YouTube. Thanks, you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay. Jeez.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.